Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, partial results give a pretty full picture with 99.15% of Monday's vote. There's no doubt about the return of Rwanda's President Paul Kagame for a fourth term. Also, South Africa's Sky Islands get a protective boost. The discovery of dozens of unique species in Mabu forest in Mozambique win it the designation of an ecologically valuable ecoregion. And how to take Africa's creative industries to their natural crescendo. The continent's cultural capital is being cashed in globally, but faces challenges. And I hear from one of the directors, the board directors of a collective helping deliver on the sector's potential as an economic driver. But first, unsurprisingly, President Paul Kagame looks set for a fourth term after Monday's election. In his best results of his 24 years in power, partial results hand him over 99% of the vote. A constitutional change means that he could technically govern Rwanda until 2034 if he's re-elected again in 5 years. Our Kayode Adebayo brings us more from Kigali.
President Paul Kagame will govern for another 5 years after his re-election with more than 99% of the vote, according to the first results. The final results are not expected until the end of July, but at a party in his honor on Monday night with his party, the RPF, Kagame already declared that his score reflects the confidence that Rwandans have in him, even though it is considered as autocratic by many of his critics. The commission in charge of the vote claims that 98% of registered voters participated, same as in the last election. The only real opponent now, Frank Habineza, is far behind the head of state with 0.5% of the vote, barely better than in 2017. He immediately conceded defeat and congratulated Kagame. Another opponent, Burna, who was not allowed to run after a conviction in 2011, called it a victory without flavor or political triumph. Kagame and the RPF landslide should continue this Tuesday with the results of the legislative elections. The presidential party and its allies traditionally secure a majority of the seats.
Kayode Adebayo there for us. Look, now there's some news in brief. Almost a third of victims hospitalised with war-related injuries in Sudan are women or children under 10. Aid group Doctors Without Borders, or MSF, shared the grim statistics about the 15-month conflict on Tuesday. MSF-supported hospitals are the only ones still operating in much of the country. Tens of thousands of people have been killed in the battling between the army and the RSF paramilitary since it broke out last year. Meanwhile, the question of humanitarian assistance and civilian protections are at the heart of UN-backed talks between delegations from the warring parties that are still underway in Geneva. There were more scattered anti-government rallies across Kenya on Tuesday. Police in Nairobi fired tear gas and water cannon at demonstrators who turned out calling for President William Ruto's exit. Crowds also took to the streets in Mombasa. Protests first began a month ago, sparked by planned tax hikes, which have since been rolled back after the marches descended into deadly violence and accusations of police brutality. An estimated 50 people have been killed since the protests first began in mid-June. And a suspected Kenyan serial killer will be held for 30 days as police investigate. 33-year-old Collins Jumaisa Khalusa reportedly confessed to killing and dismembering 42 women since 2022. At least 10 bodies have been found at an abandoned quarry in Nairobi since Friday. Police claim that when he was arrested early Monday morning, he'd been going after another potential victim. His lawyer, though, accuses police of obtaining his confession through torture. The killings have also sparked criticism of police that so many women could have been brutally murdered without authorities noticing. Now, the discovery of plants and animals found nowhere else on Earth has meant that the largest rainforest in southern Africa will now be better protected from damage caused by human activity like mining and logging. Mabu forest in Mozambique's part of a newly recognized ecoregion and home to the famous Sky Islands. And it turns out some pretty unique residents as well. Take a look.
It's known as the Sky Island. Sitting atop a remote mountain, surrounded by lowland, Mount Mabu, the largest rainforest in southern Africa, could soon become a protected area. as explorers document hundreds of new species unique to the forest.
I hope that we have a new species for this area.
That's very exciting.
Amazing.
Remote and little known to the outside world up until about 20 years ago, the jungle remains lush and almost untouched compared to other major forests. Such isolation means that fauna and flora have grown in their own environment without mixing their DNA with other breeds, strains or species.
The forest is in excellent condition. The water is crystal clear. This is about as good as it gets.
Snakes, butterflies and bugs. The rainforest is a haven for biodiversity.
Oh my God, I mean, what have we discovered here?
Each expedition brings groundbreaking discoveries to the scientific world.
Thought that it was like 4 meters up in a small vine. Zicambia bailisi. It's a chameleon which is only found on Mount Mabu.
Naming and documenting new species is the first step in protecting them, but also in understanding their role in healthy ecosystems. Dung beetles, for example, are essential to a well-functioning environment. Dr. Daniels has already discovered a dozen different species native to the rainforest, and to attract them, he uses his own unconventional methods.
I'm using my feces as a bait to attract dung beetles here in the forest.
Turning Mount Mabu into a protected area means that logging and mining will be forbidden, bringing Mozambique closer to its commitment to protect 30% of its land by 2030, in line with COP15 agreements to fight climate change.
Now, since last summer, the El Niño weather phenomenon's wrought havoc on harvests in Zimbabwe. Half of the country's population's been left food insecure, and the government's scrambling to both boost climate resilience and has declared a state of disaster.
A bed of sand and a patch of mud is all that remains in the Kapotesa Dam. It once provided the water vital for crops and livestock in this remote part of Zimbabwe.
This year, there was very little rain and the river is dry. We were not able to work in the garden.
The prolonged drought linked to the El Niño phenomenon and climate change has cut cereal production by more than 75% and left at least 7.6 million people in need of humanitarian aid. That's almost half of the population. Children under the age of 5, pregnant women, and new mothers are most affected.
We've recorded an increase in terms of cases of malnutrition over the last 3 months. They've increased by around 20% in the district.
In May, President Emerson Mnangagwa declared a state of disaster. He said Zimbabwe needed at least $2 billion to respond to the drought. Early July, they received an insurance payout of over $16 million from the African Risk Capacity Group, designed to help African Union member states plan, prepare, and better respond to extreme weather events.
The payout is complemented by payouts to our ARC replica partners amounting to $6.1 million to the WFP and $8.9 million to START Network. Zimbabwe will therefore receive a total of $31.8 million from this payout.
International organizations are also trying to raise money for Zimbabwe. The UN launched a $430 million donation campaign in early June. So far, they say they haven't received any external contributions.
Now, globally, Africa's creative sectors have gone from strength to strength over the years, from the rise of Afrobeats and Amapiano and names like Burna, Davido, Tyla becoming household names around the world. The continent's global cultural heft is undeniable, from music to cinema to fashion. But challenges remain, and a lot of it lies with infrastructure and investment. And I'm joined now by Kayode Adebayo, founder of one of the directors of the Arts Connect Africa organisation, which works to professionalise the promotion of African culture and music. Thanks so much for speaking to me, Kayode. So first of all, as I mentioned there, Africa's doing pretty well when it comes to spreading its kind of cultural offerings around the world. But for you, what's missing from this ecosystem?
So thanks for having me. So what is missing right now is some level of technical expertise, some level of education training that would position the continent to be able to be fully involved in the ecosystem, the global ecosystem, to be involved in the value chain and the supply chain of these creative products on the global level. And by getting to that level of professionalism or maybe technical expertise, it allows more, foreign exchange to be able to come into the continent and be useful for people, for the ecosystem that has participated for so long in taking this cultural, products into the global market, basically.
And so how does this shortfall in some of the kind of maybe like behind the scenes technical expertise affect the creative industry's ability to contribute economically to the continent's fortunes? Okay,
so for every artist, for every Burna Boy you see on stage, there is most likely like 100 experts and 100 professionals behind the camera that is working very tirelessly to keep Burna Boy just out there. Most of the time, the way the industry is designed right now, most of the time, Burna Boy will be the one that will get the largest share of the whole situation around him. But when you look at global situations, it trickles down onto all the professionals that are involved and even are behind the camera. So Africa needs to be able to get our young people right now, especially now that we have the youngest continent in the world, to those that are involved in this creative space, to be able to train them, to make them capable and able to be able to participate more globally and more professionally in that space, and then be able to get some level of income that will keep them sustainable, that will keep them to be able to participate better in that space, and then of course be able to support their families and support the general ecosystem, basically.
So Arts Connect Africa is doing what it can to kind of push things in that, to improve things on that front, but it can't manage everything by itself. What would you like to see happening outside of the industry in order to better support the creative sectors contributing economically to the continent?
So aside the brain trust, aside the technical, minds that are, involved in getting this out, there needs to be support from different facets of the, of what we call the nation, basically, or the continent. We need to look at it from a technology angle. Can we get more technology into this space so that it's easier for people to be able to participate at scale? Can we get better financing? Can we get policies generally from the governments that allow us to be able to see this industry, not just like as it is for the old economy businesses like oil, like banking, but we have to really be able to take it seriously that this economy, this creative economy is sizable, is huge, and is able to mop up a lot of young people from unemployment and be able to make their lives better. So we need the participation of everybody along that whole value, that whole supply chain. As I mentioned earlier, the government is important for policies. Technology is important, like what Crowd is doing, human resource, being able to expose human resource to the global economy. So that Africa has a very larger pie out of the bigger global business in itself. And it's only that way that the business, of the creative industry can stay sustainable and eventually cater to a lot of Africans, bring them out of poverty and let them be able to live respectable lives, basically.
Thank you so much, Kayode Adebayo, for giving us that insight into some of the work being done by Arts Connect Africa to professionalise some aspects, perhaps behind the scenes, of the cultural sectors that have shot up in appreciation around the world. That, though, is all we have time for Eye on Africa. Thanks very much for joining us, though. Do so again if you can. Till then, take care.
Special event. Follow all the news from the Games in our new programme.
Hello and welcome to Destination Paris.
Different perspectives, reports, interviews with the athletes.
So this is all a very important part of the process. We've got to try avoid injuries as best as we can.
We'll bring you all the preparations for this historic event. Don't miss Destination Paris on France 24.
I'm Natalie Savrikas, France 24's Athens correspondent. I'll be bringing you the latest from Greece and Cyprus live here on news and other TV programs. So join me here on France 24.
Natalie Savarikas, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.